just had what is probably the most erotic experience I've had in my entire life. I just hate to say it. I mean, of course, I haven't had that many experiences, but Susan has been feeling ill. She had a cold, and I offered to rub her feet, to rub her toes, to give her some stimulation. That went on. I probably rubbed her feet, her toes, her beautiful feet. She has such pretty feet. Of course, everything about her is pretty beautiful. And I know she felt it. I mean, I know she couldn't have missed it. She's not naive either, I know, from what I've read in her journals. That girl is not naive. When I started massaging her legs, I would have loved to go all the way up her legs, but I did do her calves because her feet were resting in my crotch, so I sort of rubbed her calves. She didn't seem to mind at all having me that close. I mean, I was close. I was touching her with my crotch.
Welcome back to another episode of Grizzly True Crime. My name is Grizzly K, and this is a continuation of the story, The Disappearance of Susan Powell. Unfortunately, the remains that they found in the abandoned mine in Utah, by they I mean the Diesel brothers, Heavy D Sparks, check out their channel as well, those turned out to be animal remains. But knowing this family, knowing this father, what Josh did, what Michael did, John, this other brother I've just heard about, Alina, the sister, knowing this entire Powell family dynamic, I wouldn't really put it past them to have discarded of Susan's remains in that abandoned mine, set it alight, and made sure to also put an animal in there so that there would be animal bones. It wouldn't really surprise me, so I really hope that the pants, which are now being sent in for forensic testing, will turn out to be Susan's. Why do we want this? Because it's been 13 years of no answers. Imagine if your friend, your daughter, your sister, imagine if a loved one just disappears. You know the husband did it, but then he killed himself, or first the two children and himself, before any justice was served, before there were any answers. Can you imagine how excruciating that must be? It's heartbreaking to see Susan's dad out there at the mine, also digging through the soil, also looking just for any sign of his daughter, any closure. I mean, yes, he beat the Powells at a whole bunch of lawsuits, and yes, he inherited a lot of money, but he's using all of that to find his daughter. It's absolutely heartbreaking to watch. So, let me first show you, before we get into the story, I just want to show you this image of items that they found. This is a picture of items found in Steven Powell's home. What you can see here are Susan's t-shirts, undergarments, used tampons, pads, cotton wool, nail clippings, and all sorts of things. It's horrendous. Okay, so in order to understand why Steven Powell was even such a large part of this case, or of Susan's life, we have to just look back at when exactly Susan and Josh met and how Susan came in contact with Steven Powell. I mean, I know it's her father-in-law, but I mean, why did he have so many photos of her, so many videos? How was he able to get that, besides stalking her, which he also did? Well, if we look back, Joshua met Susan Cox, a classmate at his LDS Church Institute of Religion course, during a dinner party at his Tacoma apartment in 2000. November 2000. By April of the next year, the pair were married. And yes, Steven Powell already had his camcorder there with him, and he was recording the whole thing, but zooming in a whole bunch on Susan. He was already then so focused on Susan, and already then trying to interfere with his son's relationship, doing his level best to get in between his son and Susan, which is already so ridiculous. But it gets so much worse. When Joshua and Susan got married, Susan thought she's going to have a home with him, raise children, have a family, except Josh got fired a lot. Josh could not keep a stable job. Josh was pretty arrogant. And so he could not provide for her properly. He couldn't buy a home. He couldn't really afford that for them. So he decided, you know what the best plan is? Let's move in with my dad. that was a huge problem, because the minute they did that, Steve had access to Susan and he was highly inappropriate. So they say it was for a brief period following their wedding. Joshua and Susan lived with Steven Powell in his home in South Hill, Washington. The same home where they seized all the stuff, all this video footage, photographs, and not just photographs of Susan either. He took photos and stalked many, many women. He was a voyeur, 14 counts of voyeurism, but there's probably more like 1,400 counts, you know, based on all the pictures and all the videos they found there. I mean, he was a complete sicko, but he was 100% obsessed with Susan. He wrote songs for Susan. He literally set up a whole music studio and then wrote songs for her under his alias name, Steve Shansong.
And he said, I can love you in a secret way.
Little song. Yeah, he sings that badly. I'm not a singer, but he sang that badly. Like, I can love you in a secret way and all this. We're gonna get into it, so just hang in there. I'm just giving you a little bit of background. Eventually, Susan and Joshua moved out. They got a mortgage on a house. They had 2 sons, Charlie, born in 2005, and Braden, born in 2007. By 2009, Susan would be missing, gone. From what everybody knows, which we can't say because we just don't have the proof, it's the alleged. She was murdered, and her remains were discarded. Unfortunately, successfully. By her horrendous family. They might be accomplices. I mean, oh my word. Let me show you this.
If you knew Josh did something, or if he told you something, would you come forward and tell us?
I'm not sure I would.
And that's how he says it. I'm not sure I would. Arrogant as ever. Now we're going to have a look at this clip. This is from KSL, and they're referring to the information gathered by a podcast called Cold. Absolutely brilliant, highly detailed episodes on this case. So if you want to check that out, I will link it below for you.
The newest member.
Verde.
I'm sorry.
No, we're not idiots. We don't butcher the Spanish language.
You don't. This is the newest member of Susan and Josh's family.
This is our baby.
Digging through those tapes and the other evidence police seized, I learned 2 things. Stephen's claim that he had a mutual intimate relationship with his daughter-in-law was anything but, and his infatuation with her went way beyond anything even the police might have imagined.
Here, let me just get a picture of you two.
For years, Steve Powell lived with a camcorder in his hand, videotaping important events. Weddings, graduations.
Hey Josh, wave. There you go.
He's literally one of those dudes that always has a camera and always wants to film everyone without their consent. Pet peeve of mine.
But look closer at these moments captured on camera, and you'll see a startling pattern. Regardless of the occasion, Steve Powell focused his lens on one thing.
Hold your hand up, please.
Susan.
Great. Now we will no longer look at your fingers. We will look at you. That's...
You know what that feels like, right? When she's like, great. That physiology, I feel it. I've been in those situations where you're like, great. But it's like, oh my word, this makes me so uncomfortable. Right? I know men also go through things, but I'm pretty sure every single lady here, you know what it feels like when it's like, great, and you're just trying to be polite, you feel really uncomfortable, your body language shows it, but yet no one can really see. Do you know what I mean?
Susan. There's Josh. I want her.
To not...
Oh my word, did you see that? There's Josh. There's Susan. I want her. What?
further victimize Susan, we won't show you most of Steve's videos. The majority detail Steve's fantasies about Susan, which are sexually explicit. But to understand the family turmoil she endured, you need to see how Steve fixated on her from the very early days of her marriage.
We're too close.
See, there it is again. She's like, you're too close. And I find a lot of guys say, why don't you speak up? Why don't you say something? Why don't you say no? Why don't you say you're creeping me out? I don't know. Maybe times have changed. I hope so. But the way I believe most of us were raised is that women are polite. Women are sweet. Women don't say, like, you don't shout aggressively at a male either. And kind of you're uncomfortable and scared. This is why when we analyze the Moab body cam footage, the question that I propose that people could ask anyone in a situation like that is, are you scared right now? Or do you feel uncomfortable? Are you scared? Do you fear for your life in any way? Any of those types of questions would really help, because sometimes being like, you're too close is like a polite way of being like, back off because you're scaring me. It's a fear response. You can't really tell a person exactly how they should act when they're in fear. You know, there's many times that I reflect on where I wish I could have spoken up. You know, sometimes to men out there, no doesn't mean no. It means yes, I'm going to try even harder. And then eventually they're just going to get what they want to get. You know what I mean? When it's like, you don't know what to do anymore. You don't know what to say. You would need someone to intervene. But to think that this father-in-law, you see what I mean? He's in a room at a wedding, and yes, he's filming the wedding, but he's kind of zooming in the whole time on Susan, and this is all developing right under the nose of Joshua. There is speculation that Josh knew about his father's behavior and just let it happen. So there's a lack of protection there. Alina, Josh's sister, horrible woman. I'm sorry, I'm just going to say it like that. I mean, when Steven told Alina, his daughter, about his infatuation with Susan, she supported it fully. Okay, and not only that, she said, well, you know, Susan's just a player, and that's what they do. They just lead guys on. Excuse me? Oh, my word. So, I don't know. I just feel like if I was at that wedding, based on what I know and how I know Susan would be feeling in that moment, I'd be like, yo, bro, can you maybe put the camera down a little bit? You're making her uncomfortable type thing. And if you are even in a situation when you're watching something, you're like, that's a little weird, shame, that person looks really uncomfortable, I would say go for it, intervene. It could either save a life, or it could just at least help that person know you're supported. People are here, they got your back. You know, it must feel horrible to be the bride and then still have your freaking creepy father-in-law, which has been a father-in-law for what, an hour at that point, behaving like that. It's horrible. I just find the biggest problem is being overly polite. And if I can impart any wisdom from all my trauma, from 38 years on this earth, I would say, rather be brave. Yes, don't be polite, because they're not being polite to you. They're violating your boundaries. They're making you uncomfortable. You have the right to say, you're making me uncomfortable, put the camera down. Get away from me. Things like that. It's taken me a long time to learn that, which is why, if that helps anyone, I'll be happy. Okay, so let's continue to look at this.
Steve's own journals reveal his infatuation became perversion and persisted.
Was sweet to watch her bring Verda to her lips to kiss him. In reviewing the tape, I get the impression that she starts to put a little, I don't know, starts to feel a little self-conscious or something. Oh my word, look at these diaries. Let's go back one. She's such a what? It's difficult to read. That she is in such an irrational state. If she had something often left him in Longview, he said he would have immediately filed for divorce. Oh man, that's all he wanted, was like, oh my word, I just want my son to divorce this woman because I want her for myself.
Became perversion and persisted through the years.
You know, she was very open in a sexual way.
And he
said that beyond her death. Ultimate humiliation. Like, this guy, he was just like, well, I mean, this infatuation that was never reciprocated, once she had disappeared, I mean, there was Steven Powell really rubbing it in, like, oh yeah, we were in love. Like, this was totally mutual. It was totally consensual. Like, she was very sexual. Like, okay, dude, no, totally inappropriate.
Vocal about it after she disappeared, claiming Susan was a willing participant.
It was definitely a romantic obsession, yeah. I mean, you know, Susan's a beautiful woman, and when a beautiful woman comes on to you like that, it's really hard to resist that kind of a thing. I mean, maybe it's just me. Probably inappropriate, but...
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say it's just him. There's unfortunately a lot of creepers in the world, but like when he's like, maybe it's just me, maybe a little inappropriate, little bit, very inappropriate. Yes, and you're saying this on the news. Can you imagine what he says behind closed doors? Oh my word.
I admit those things were going on.
But no one knew the depth of his obsession until investigators stepped foot in his bedroom.
It was a house of horrors when we went through there.
Police were there to retrieve Susan's childhood journals. Journals Steve spent years swiping and scanning. And journals...
He read her childhood journals obsessively. And him and Joshua were trying to paint Susan as someone very abused, unstable, highly sexual. I mean, they both spoke about her in the worst light, beyond her disappearance.
Josh and Steve had intended to publish to paint Susan as promiscuous, but that plan...
They intended to publish it to paint her as promiscuous. This family is insane.
Backfired.
Yeah, that opened the door for us. That gave us the search warrant that got us into the house. That found that and much more evidence. Yeah.
Inside a locked filing cabinet in Steve Powell's closet, police found evidence that his self-proclaimed relationship with Susan was one-sided. He stalked her.
Look at this. He's just filming her without her knowing.
Videotaping her from inside his car. He stole her personal items. Her underwear, nail clippings, hygiene products. And he doctored photos of her and used his camera to build his collection.
20 to 25 detectives there, and we all went, wow. We were like, that's crazy.
Oh yeah, and that is crazy.
So crazy it bordered on delusion. Steve spent years convincing himself that Susan loved him back.
And I know she felt it. I mean, I know she couldn't have missed it. She's not naive either, I know, from what I've read in her journals. But if she didn't notice that, she's...
What should we call him? We need a name for this dude. I know he's dead now. What in the hell?
No, she did. She had to.
Sometimes Susan knew she was being filmed. Other times, she had no idea. We found one tape not even Steve realized he was recording.
It just seems like...
That captured the moment that he professed his love for her.
What do we fall in love with you?
Look at these tapes. Susan and Josh pose South Falls. Okay, path under the South Falls. Susan, profile with flower in her hair. Susan wades below South Falls. Steve gets into the picture. Susan in a Christmas dress. What is going on here? Look at this. Susan on the couch in jeans. This is horrendous. It's guys like this that are, it's a little bit of a trigger for me, because I'm sorry to insert myself. I'm just saying it so that we can relate. If anyone relates to the story, right? I feel like what I'm about to say, you might be like, oh, exactly. When I went to see a psychologist, initially they thought that I'm fearing some kind of man running down the street with a knife in his hand ready to attack me. That's not what I fear. I fear these types of dudes. A dude exactly like Steven Powell, when they're like creepy and like polite and sweet talking, but it's so inappropriate. It is so crazy. It's so beyond uncomfortable that you don't even know what to do. You don't know who to tell. You don't know what to do, because it's just like, why is this happening? Like, how is this even happening? Your brain is trying to come up with, how did I get into this? What is going on here? Does this happen to other people? It's so bizarre. And I'm going to play you now portions of that audio clip. So what happened is that, as we know, Steven Powell filmed Susan a lot. And this one time he had his camcorder in his car and he was filming Susan, and then he offered Susan a ride home because Josh was going to take a while doing something. And he took that camcorder and thought he put it off and put it into the, what do you guys call it? It's like the cubby hole, you know what I mean? Little compartment, glove compartment. I think that's what you guys call it. we call it like a cubby. And so he put the camera in there, but it hadn't turned off. And he later found, oh, that was recording the whole time, and re-listened to it, which is why it's also still available, because he was listening to it, convincing himself that Susan, in fact, hadn't really rejected him the way he thought that she did. I mean, he wrote in his journal after this phone call how hurt he was, how betrayed he felt. But then later he's like, oh, when I hear it again, actually, she didn't reject me at all. So let's have a listen to this phone call.
Maybe I'm getting the wrong signals from you. Maybe I'm interpreting something that I shouldn't be interpreting. It just, for example, when we were sitting on the couch, it just felt like you were very, I was extremely aroused, and I think you were somewhat aroused. At least I thought.
I don't know where you're going with this.
And Susan, I don't. Well, I'll tell you what I'm
married to your son, and I should just be the daughter-in-law.
I know.
Which puts me a step beneath your own children.
Okay.
And that's where I'm comfortable.
Okay.
I was kind of meaning to talk to you about this because I realized the last time I came over that my own father, and not to be mean to him about it because everyone treats everyone differently, but my own father doesn't kiss me. He, as of like 6 years ago maybe, just started getting in the habit of saying, I love you, and my mom also. My family is not that vocal and physical with showing their emotion. Mainly it's just you tease someone to show that you care about them.
Yeah.
Which I think is what is the first level that most people use. Your coworkers, you tease them because you like hanging out with them. And I was just thinking about the last time that my own father doesn't kiss me and you kiss me, and I didn't like that.
Okay. Are you upset at me for talking to you like that?
No, it's nice to answer your questions.
I appreciate that, I really do, because I've been wanting to. Are you gonna talk to Josh about it?
Is there anything I don't talk to Josh about?
See what I mean? He's like coercing her into this extremely uncomfortable situation. He's at the wheel, remember? So the power dynamic is way off. She's in the car, like, oh my word, he's being so sweet because he gave me a ride home. So she didn't know what she was walking into, but he's driving the car, literally got her life in his hands while saying all this stuff. That must have been so uncomfortable. And then she's like, I don't know where you're going with this because I'm your daughter-in-law. And it's like, my dad doesn't even kiss me, but that you are, and it's making me uncomfortable. And you can hear she's being overly polite, and I hear the fear. I hear the trauma. I don't know if you do, but it's an absolutely bizarre situation to be in. And I have tremendous empathy for the life that she lived since she ran into this family. I mean, some of you ask, why would she marry him? But she didn't know what she was getting into. I mean, they were both young. She thought this was great. I mean, sometimes you just don't know what exactly you're getting yourself into. It all seems pretty normal, and it seemed safe because they were all part of the LDS church initially. I mean, Steven broke off from the church, got divorced. His wife divorced him. He broke off from the church, and then he would mock the church all day long. So that must have been also highly confusing for his young children, which is why Joshua apparently acted out so much. He was extremely violent as a child, whipping out knives, killing his sister's gerbils, trying to unalive himself with a rope in the backyard. Like, whoa. And all three, I actually don't know exactly how many siblings there are. Apparently there was Joshua, Michael, John, Alina, and then there's another one, Jennifer Graves, and Jennifer completely removed herself from her family. She's completely estranged from the family, heard about all this on the news, said she was extremely sad, but lives a private life. Like, good for her. I get goosebumps right now. I'm like so happy for her that she broke away from this family, because sometimes you're in a situation where you think, Am I the problem? Because all around me is just all this friggin' mental illness and toxicity. But it can happen. It can happen. Sometimes trauma attracts trauma. Or sickness attracts sickness. And maybe you're surrounded by it and you're just like, what is going on here? But sometimes it can just be an entirely sinister situation. And this case reminds me of that. So if you can, if it's not healthy, if it's toxic and you can get out, get out.
Run, bitch! Run!
You must, for your own safety, for the well-being of yourself, for your children, for your future. Absolutely. Don't even feel guilty about it. If it's completely inappropriate and toxic, get out of it. Move. Like Jennifer did. She went to a completely different state, went to college, married a nice man, lives a private life. Okay, next I'm going to show you a clip of Susan's dad interacting with Steve Powell, Joshua's dad, just to show you how sickening Steven really is. It is... I have so much empathy for Chuck Cox as well, who's looking for his daughter's remains, and the audacity of this Powell family. Watch this. Okay, so here we have Susan's dad, and here we have Joshua's dad. Susan's dad, of course, still alive, looking for his daughter, desperately looking for her. Steven Powell, thankfully no longer on this earth.
So I could just sneak a little shot. Oh yeah, sneak a little shot. Yeah, sure. I did, and I got it. Okay, that's fine.
I mean, he's like, so you thought you would just sneak little shots. He's like, yeah, I did. Yep, I got those.
And I guess we're here,
You're
right?
not believable.
Yeah, right, sir. Right, I'm not. You are, though. Anyway, is there any other...
Oh my word. Lame. Lame comebacks in any case, but so inappropriate. It's like, you are unbelievable. And he's like, yeah, I'm not, but you are, though. Anyway, any other questions? Look at this guy.
A question that I can answer for anybody. I'm totally open to anything. I mean, we've got...
Oh, we know you're open to anything. Friggin' voyeur. Friggin' going after your daughter-in-law. Saying that even if you knew that your son did something, you probably wouldn't tell anyone. Like, oh my word. Like, he's like, I'm open to anything. We know, you sicko.
We've got a lot of information about the Cox family and about Susan. A lot of it from her journals. A lot of it from Josh's... You know, he lived with Susan for 8 years before she left.
Look at the dad. I feel so sorry for him here because he's just like this guy going off. Susan's dad is just like arms folded and just like he cannot believe what he's dealing with here. No one can. Look at it. It's... I don't even know what to call it. It's just completely nuts.
He knows a lot that is not in the journals, but the journals confirm what he knows that Susan told him about her family, about her growing.
So this sicko who was stalking Chuck's daughter, being highly inappropriate, taking pictures of her, infatuated with her, sexually pursuing her, and all this is now claiming to know Susan better than her own dad.
The police said that Josh has not contacted and I don't know if you can respond to that.
What is your name again? Erica. Yeah. Okay, Erica, that is a real... I give you an answer, but that's a little bit convoluted and long, and I've told Josh, maybe we should just explain that on our website. There was a reason Josh quit talking to the West Valley City Police, and the reason had to do with... What's that? Yeah. Well, yeah. No, that's fine. He basically, Josh had an extensive interview with them the day or so after Susan disappeared, Erica, and the way they handled the interview, and they know they handled it wrong. They know they screwed up. If you go back to December 2009, they themselves admit there's a controversy over the reasons Josh quit contacting them and got himself an attorney. There's a controversy within, an internal controversy in the West Valley.
He's standing up for his murderous son, who also then murdered 2 young children and himself.
City Police. It's because that was because they screwed up. And you know, as I told Josh, we should probably explain that on our website. We're not. I doubt that Josh will ever talk to.
Yes, because putting it on the website, that's what's going to help, right?
West Valley City Police, Erica. But he'll talk to the FBI. They just have to call. They know our number. They know my email. I contacted them 3 or 4 months ago about some possible lead that I had. But they don't, you know, they'll contact me if they want to. They don't tell us anything about the investigation. The only thing they told us is they believe she's alive. They've told us that. And Josh had nothing to do with her disappearance. That's what they've told us.
I don't think so.
They told us a couple of other things, but nothing about specifics about the investigation. That was 4 months after or 3 months after we told them about the Steven Kosher possibility. We think that their investigation into that probably had something to do with their conclusion that she's alive. They must have found something. I told Josh at the time, I said, they know she's alive. They wouldn't say they believe she's alive. They know she's alive.
Can you believe the audacity of this man? And finally, in painting the picture for you of what on earth the creature Steven Powell was, who better than Nancy Grace to snark? Snarky queen, am I right? Like, let's see.
Mystery surrounding the disappearance of a young stockbroker, a mother of 2, Susan Powell. After bizarre and outrageous claims by her father-in-law he was having a torrid affair with her, we get our mitts on his private journals that reveal his twisted and sick sex obsession, a sex obsession with his own daughter-in-law, Susan Powell. These diaries, they're complete with undercover photos, and what I mean by that is this guy, let me just start off with saying he's been busted taking long shot photos of an
That we just love her. He's been busted. I love her for taking long shot photos of her.
8- and 9-year-old little girl in the bathroom.
Of an 8- and 9-year-old little girl in the bathroom. No. Oh my word.
Room across the way, like across the street, going to the bathroom. He takes pictures of these children, these little girls, as they're teaching in their own bathroom. These graphic photos he takes of her, she didn't pose for them. He would slip mirrors under doors, take long shot lens photos of her. But the big question tonight, forget about his creepy sex obsession with his own daughter-in-law. My question tonight is, did this perv mastermind Susan's disappearance and death and the murder of her 2 little boys? And what
I do also wonder if he had anything to do with Susan's disappearance, because being so obsessed, it would be really weird to me that he'd just be like, oh, she's gone. Oh well, I don't know about that.
I can only describe as a towering inferno in the home of their addled-brained father, Josh Powell. Her parents are torn in half at the loss of their 2 grandchildren, the loss of their daughter, who we all know we'll never see again. Now, Josh Powell's family, including the stepfather, still contends that she ran off with another man. That did not happen.
Did you hear it? See, Josh Powell's father, Steve, thinks that she ran off with another man. Like, your son allegedly murdered her and got rid of the remains, and your other son may have helped. I mean, he may have even been involved in helping with his cover-up, or who knows. I don't know. I don't even want to go there of what if Steven Powell knew that Susan had died. I wouldn't even want to go to that abyss in my mind of what he would want to do with her body. That's just too far for me. So, but I wouldn't put it past him. But no, publicly he says, well, she probably ran off with another man. Why? Because she never consented to the relationship that he thought that they had. Ew.
Okay. When you hear his diaries, you too may come to question whether he, in fact, was the mastermind behind her death and the deaths of her children. He is refusing to talk to police. He's not talking to anybody.
Said might have got some crotch shots as she moved into these positions, but there were others in the house. I had to be discreet.
His obsession goes to the point.
The above shot turns me on mainly because when I look at it, I imagine Susan is giving the camera a mischievous smile because she's not wearing...
Clark Goldband. Well, you know what? I'll let you explain it, Clark. I want to hear about how he would go into their dirty laundry and how he would buy her pantyhose.
Yes, Nancy. This is in over 2,300 pages of these diaries. We've gone through every single page, and there are
2,300 pages worth of his diaries. See, I told you, between him and his long journaling, and then Joshua and his weird audio journaling, lots of stuff to discover there.
There are a few occasions, more than a few occasions, where Powell writes of going through Susan Powell's underwear drawer, taking pairs of underwear, and using it later to masturbate. He also talks about trying to find Susan Powell's hair and making a hair collection out of Susan Powell's hair that he also, it would appear, assists him in masturbation. The stockings you just brought up a few moments ago, Steven Powell writes that he apparently purchases multiple copies of the same type of stockings, and that's because he gave a pair to Susan and kept a spare for himself. Then after Susan would wear the stockings, Steve Powell apparently would swap those stockings out, take those stockings back to his home, and use those stockings also to assist him in gratifying himself.
Oh my word. This... Honestly, it makes me nauseous. It makes me have this knot in my stomach and just like, oh, it's just like I'm so creeped out. Her face says it all. Look.
Okay, let me get this straight. So, put gold band up there. So, the father-in-law who's sitting behind bars right now refusing to talk would go to the store, buy her hose, her pantyhose, go home, take her pantyhose she wore the day before that she hadn't washed yet, and take them home to masturbate with them, and then replace them with the newly purchased hose, and she never knew about it.
Yep.
Right.
That's what Steve Powell writes in these diaries.
Oh, yes. And that is about as much as I can tolerate today. I also have my limits, believe it or not. And I'm like, oh, no. This is it's just too much. If you want me to cover anything else in this case, please let me know in the comments below. I'm happy to. We could look at Michael. That's the next one to look at. That is interesting. So let me know if in the comments if you want me to do that. We could cover Michael, Joshua's brother, another one of Steven Powell's sons, and his possible involvement in Susan's disappearance. Because, oh man, that was strange. What he did with his car afterwards, where he towed it to after it broke down, wanting satellite imagery, all this stuff. There's so much to uncover with him as well. And if any of you, this is a challenge, Grizzly challenge time. If you can find me some information about John, the other sibling. So we've got Joshua, Michael, then there's John and Alina. We'll leave Jennifer Graves alone because she has her own new life. But I need some information on John and Alina. If you could find pictures, if you could find articles, anything about those two, that would be amazing. Please send it to me, grizzlytruecrime@gmail.com. I would highly appreciate it. And then we'll continue looking at this case layer by layer as we go through it to see. I don't know if we'll ever know what happened to Susan Powell, but I truly hope for her family's sake that they find her remains. I worry though, because this family is so sick and twisted that I do worry that there will never be any results. That they actually would get away with something like this, because they're not like masterminds, but they are very calculated, very sick, and they work together, and that's the problem. I mean, at some stage there was even the uncle. That's another one to look at. Oh my word. Joshua's uncle offered him a place to stay after Susan disappeared, which Joshua didn't take up the opportunity, but his whole property was searched at a time for Susan's body because of him initially being, which they didn't release until years later, a person of interest in her disappearance. Interesting, right? So you let me know what you want me to cover below. I know that I've also asked you guys which country you want me to go to next, so we can cover a case from there. We'll get there. I mean, this is a long-term channel. Grizzly True Crime is here to stay, so we'll get there. We'll travel all over the world and cover cases from all over the place. Thank you so much for your suggestions for that as well. If you still want to drop those suggestions below, do that too. Name the country and the killer that you want me to cover as a case study like this in either one part or multiple parts. I'll be happy to look into it. I have received a lot of suggestions, so now it's like, oh, like how do we pick some really good ones? And I'm like, oh my word. But we will get there. I thank you so much for watching this. I'm gonna like get some sun, take a deep breath, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you very much for watching.